You're not going crazy. You are being gaslit. The Energy Minister Chris Bowen stands up in Parliament and tells us, with a straight face, that Australia's fuel supply is secure. And yet, as of this morning, 178 service stations in New South Wales are completely dry of diesel. 58 of them have nothing left at all. Across the whole country, that number is over 600. So how did we get here? How did their official story become so completely disconnected from the reality we are all living? Story become so disconnected from our reality? It wasn't a mistake. It was a plan. A cold, calculated decision made in a sterile room, far away from any petrol station queue. Picture it. The Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, standing at a podium, the perfectly ironed suit, the reassuring blue backdrop, the practiced, confident tone. He looks straight down the barrel of the camera and tells all of us that the national fuel supply is secure. Secure. That was the official story, the line pushed by the highest office in the country. And honestly, you can almost see the cynical logic behind it. They were terrified of public panic. They had these visions of us fighting over petrol bowsers like we fought over toilet paper. And so their strategy was to manage us, to simply deny a problem existed in the first place, hoping it would go away. So the Prime Minister, the Energy Minister, they all got the memo. They formed this united front, a solid wall of denial, hoping we'd all just look at the wall and not at the empty ships on the horizon. But you can't gaslight reality, and they had no idea that a single event, happening thousands of kilometers away, was about to put the first crack in that wall, a crack that would soon splinter into a full-blown shatter. That single event, the crack in the wall of denial, it wasn't some abstract financial report. It started with 6 ships, let's be very clear about this. 6 massive fuel tankers scheduled to arrive in April from our key suppliers in Malaysia, Singapore and South Korea suddenly vanished from the shipping schedules. They were either cancelled or rerouted away from Australia. Gone. Now, for a country that runs on fumes, a country with almost no strategic fuel reserve, what do you think happens when the tankers stop coming? The theory becomes reality, fast. The problem moves from a news headline into your neighbourhood. And it did. Within weeks, the physical evidence started appearing at the pump. We're talking around 500, maybe 550 service stations across the nation. That's roughly 8% of them, reporting they'd run out of at least one type of fuel. The abstract crisis they were monitoring was now a handwritten, "Sorry, no unleaded" sign taped to the bowser at your local servo. You can't gaslight an empty fuel pump. The public started to notice. The panic they were so desperate to avoid was beginning to brew. So, faced with undeniable facts, the government was finally forced to pivot. They shifted from total denial to admitting there was, and I quote, "a small problem." And their big, decisive response to this small problem? Honestly, you couldn't make this up. They held a meeting, an emergency national cabinet meeting. They booked a conference room, got the water jugs out, and then did what they do best. They issued a press release saying they were working with industry. They admitted there was a problem, yes. But what they did next? What came out of that meeting? It didn't just fail to solve anything. It revealed they had absolutely no idea what they were even dealing with. So, what did they do? What was the grand plan that came out of this big, important national cabinet meeting? I'll tell you. They bragged about taking meetings. And they did press releases. That was it. That was the action. We finally have a government admitting there's a problem, and their solution is to tell us they're having more meetings about it. And you have to ask yourself, why? Why are they so useless? Well, here's a number for you. A recent analysis showed that for about 70% of them, politics is the only real job they've ever had. All they know is how to do meetings. All they know is how to do nothing. So, when a real crisis hits, one that needs logistics, not lobbyists, they're just completely lost. They just do the only thing they know how. They call another meeting and draft another press release. But here's why this is so much more dangerous than just being pathetic. You need to understand how our fuel supply actually works. I want you to picture it. Imagine a map of our region, from Asia all the way down to Australia. Now picture a long, thin line of tiny tanker ships, like a line of ants, marching one by one down the ocean to our ports. That's our fuel. Now, months ago, way back at the start of that line, a few of those ants just stopped. They vanished. But you don't feel it immediately, right? The ants in the middle of the line are still marching. The supply feels normal. What we are seeing right now with those 550 petrol stations running dry, that isn't the real crisis. That's just the announcement. That's the empty gap at the very, very end of that long ant line finally arriving at our front door. And the people in charge, the ones who only know how to hold meetings, they are looking at that empty space and they have absolutely no idea what it means. And you might think, based on that every government in the world is just as asleep at the wheel. But they're not. Other countries, our allies, they saw the exact same gaps appearing in their own ant lines. And they acted decisively. And when you see what they did compared to what our government is doing, honestly, it's going to make your blood boil. So let's look at what our allies did. The ones who saw the same gaps in their own ant lines. In the Philippines, President Marcos Jr. didn't form a committee. He declared a national state of emergency, giving the government the power to control fuel prices. Done. Problem, action, solution. In Japan, they didn't wait for a press conference. On March 26th, they launched the largest release of strategic petroleum reserves in their history. They opened the taps from both private and national stockpiles to keep the country moving. South Korea? They rolled out a 12-point nationwide energy-saving guide. Practical stuff. Promoting shorter showers, even limiting exports of key petrochemicals to protect their own domestic supply. They put their own people first. Even a country like Sri Lanka, with far fewer resources than us, implemented strict fuel rationing. Just 25 litres of petrol per vehicle per week. Was it tough? Absolutely. But it was a plan. It was leadership in a crisis. So let's just stop there for a second. Emergency declarations, fuel rationing, releasing national strategic reserves. And in Australia, another meeting was scheduled. A meeting. While the rest of the world was in crisis mode, treating this like the economic heart attack it is. Our leaders were booking a conference room and ordering sandwiches. This isn't just incompetence. Honestly, it's contempt. It's a clear statement that your ability to get to work, to run your business, to feed your family, is less important than their process. It's less important than the political theatre of being seen to be doing something without actually doing anything at all. You'd think being shamed on the world stage like this would force them into action, wouldn't you? That the sheer embarrassment would be enough. But that's not what happened. What came next wasn't a plan. It was an insult. Because when they finally realized they couldn't hide behind press releases anymore, their first move wasn't to fix the supply chain. Oh no. It started with them blaming you. So, let me get this straight. After weeks of doing nothing, the government finally wakes up. And their first big move? They point the finger directly at you, at your neighbor, at anyone trying to make sure they can get to work next week. Suddenly, the problem wasn't the ships that never arrived or the empty tanks at the depots. No, the problem was you. They called it un-Australian to panic buy. Honestly, think about that. They failed to secure the country's fuel supply and then have the nerve to question your patriotism for trying to survive the mess they created. But that was just the public relations game, the distraction. While the news was filled with stories about hoarding, they quietly made their next move. And this one wasn't just insulting, it was actively harmful. They made an official decision to lower Australia's national diesel quality standards for 6 months. They literally signed a piece of paper permitting fuel with a higher sulfur content to be sold across the country. And what does that mean? It means the diesel going into the engines of the trucks that deliver our food, the machinery that builds our homes, and the tractors that grow our crops could now actively damage them. It accelerates engine wear and tear. It's a short-term fix that creates a massive long-term bill for the very people keeping this country on its feet. And if you think this is some abstract problem, just for truckies on the highway, I want you to execute a little scene in your mind. Imagine the sound on a quiet suburban morning. It's not the birds. It's the grinding silence where your garbage truck should be. It never arrives. Why? Because the very diesel it needs is either sitting in a tanker halfway across the world, or the fuel that is available is slowly poisoning its engine. As one industry expert put it, even your garbage truck is now screaming for diesel. And his logic was brutally simple. If the garbage truck has no fuel to run, your garbage doesn't get collected, does it? When the government's answer to a national crisis is to first blame you, and then to deliberately lower the quality of the essential fuel we all depend on, you have to stop and ask, who are they really working for? Because it sure doesn't feel like it's us. Let me know in the comments what your personal breaking point has been with this crisis. And it's easy to look at all this and just see sheer breathtaking incompetence. It feels like they're just flailing, making one terrible decision after another. But what if it's not incompetence? What if I told you there's a solution? A proven, simple, readily available solution that our allies are using right now. It's sitting there, like a key in a locked box. And our government has the key. They just refuse to turn it. So the question we have to ask next isn't, why are they so useless? It's, why are they actively choosing not to solve this? The answer to why they are actively choosing not to solve this is actually quite simple and infuriating. The solution has been sitting on the books for decades. It's a single, powerful piece of legislation called the Liquid Fuel Emergency Act of 1984. This law was designed for this exact scenario. It gives the government the legal authority to step in and declare a national emergency. It allows them to take control of the country's fuel inventories, manage how it's distributed, and even implement rationing to ensure that essential services, ambulances, police, food transport, are protected first. It is the in case of emergency plan, and despite the fact it has existed since 1984, it has never once been used. Let me put this in perspective. Imagine your house is on fire. There's a glass box on the wall that says, "Break in case of fire," with a fire extinguisher inside. Our government is standing there, staring at the box, refusing to break the glass. Why? Because breaking that glass would be admitting there's a fire. They'd rather watch the kitchen burn than have to explain the smoke. And that is the entire story right there. This isn't about technicalities or logistics. This is about pure political cowardice. Triggering the act would be a public, undeniable admission that every press conference, every statement about our secure supply chains was wrong. It's an admission of total failure. This is why the Energy Minister can stand up and say, on the record, we are a long way from triggering the act. They have to say that. Admitting otherwise means admitting their career is on the line. So your ability to get to work, the food on the supermarket shelves, our entire national stability is being held hostage by politicians prioritizing their careers over the national interest. And don't make the mistake of thinking this is just some political drama in Canberra. This refusal to act has a price tag, and it's you who will be paying it. It's a price you'll feel at the grocery checkout every time you pay a power bill, and you will be feeling it for years to come. Because the chain reaction they've just unleashed is about to hit your household budget. Hard. Alright, let's connect the dots on that price tag. They love to talk about Australia's just-in-time economy. It sounds efficient, doesn't it? What it really means is we live day to day with almost nothing held in reserve. Everything you buy, from milk to medicine, got to the store on a truck. And the Australian Bureau of Statistics confirms that diesel powers the vast majority of our road freight. It also underpins our agriculture. So this isn't just a fuel problem. It's an everything problem. It's what's known as a second-order supply chain collapse. Let's cut the jargon. It's a full system shutdown. First, the diesel shortage hits, and remember, we only hold about 30 days of stock nationally. Then, the trucks stop rolling. Then, the supermarket shelves start looking like they did during the pandemic lockdowns. But this time, it's not a virus, it's incompetence. And this isn't some far-off threat. It is happening now. That 67% spike in diesel prices we've already seen, that's not just a number on a screen. That's the surcharge that just made your lettuce cost more. That's the reason the tradie has to quote you more for a simple job. It is a hidden tax, engineered by inaction, that comes directly out of your ability to pay the mortgage and get ahead. The most infuriating part? They knew. In 2025, a multi-agency government exercise, codenamed Exercise Convergence, ran the simulation on this exact scenario. It explicitly warned of the fragility in our fuel infrastructure and the cascading economic consequences of a disruption. The warnings were issued, the report was filed, and they did nothing. So the structural erosion of your wealth isn't an accident. It's the predictable outcome of a choice they made. This isn't just one crisis. It's the inevitable result of a system designed to fail us. The pain you're feeling at the checkout wasn't an unavoidable side effect of global events. It was a choice. Not a choice made last week in a press conference, but a choice made over and over again for the last 30 years. A choice to sell off our national sovereignty, piece by piece. Now, we are going to look at the receipts. We're going to see who made the deals, who signed the papers, and how they sold our security for their own short-term gain. Alright, let's look at the receipts. This is the one they don't want you to see. Right now, 90% of Australia's refined fuel is imported. Think about that. The petrol in your car. There's a 55% chance it came from Singapore. The diesel for the trucks delivering your groceries? About a 1 in 3 chance it's from South Korea. This is what our government calls a secure supply chain. That is a geopolitical mirage. Relying on a handful of suppliers in one of the most volatile regions on Earth isn't security. It's a gamble with our entire way of life. And here's the most important part you need to understand. This weakness wasn't an accident. This wasn't something that just happened to Australia. This is a man-made crisis, built by decades of deliberate policy choices. There are 2 damning facts that prove this. First, for 50 years, 5 whole decades, successive governments, both Liberal and Labor, have been told by the International Energy Agency to hold 90 days of fuel in a strategic reserve. And for 50 years, they have ignored it. But it gets worse. We didn't just fail to build a buffer, we actively dismantled our own resilience. In the last 25 years, Australia has closed 6 of its 8 domestic oil refineries. 6 out of 8. We are left with just 2 refineries to service an entire continent. So when a conflict flares up in the Middle East, or a country in Asia decides to curb its exports, it's not a global problem for us. It's a domestic crisis. Because we chose to have no buffer. We sold our sovereignty for short-term convenience. The pain you are feeling at the checkout is not an unavoidable side effect of global events. You are the collateral damage of a generation of policy that sold out Australia's security. Understanding this is the first step. They gaslit you. They told you it was global pressures. They failed to act for half a century. And they engineered the very system that makes you pay the price. The only thing they can't control is an informed public that refuses to be silent. Share this with one person who needs to understand the real price they're about to pay.